Well, what's up, everybody? Today we are going to be diving into only 3 chapters, Nehemiah, chapters 11, 12, and 13. We'll give you a 2-chapter break for this week, and then following this episode, I'm so excited for tomorrow's guest that we're going to have. The next several weeks are going to be amazing, but today is the last day that you're going to actually have me solo up here. So, with that being said, let's kind of jump into what we're going to be talking about today in Nehemiah chapters 11, 12, and 13. And what we're going to be diving into is the fact that when church becomes a burden instead of a joy. I think sometimes in our own lives we can have something become a burden to us, when serving other people is a burden, or when giving something is a burden to other people. So I want to talk a little bit about how to make it a joy to give, a joy to serve, and a joy to come into the house of the Lord. And those 3 specific topics. And we look and see it in Nehemiah chapter 12, verse 45 is the one that really stood out to me. Actually, verse 44. But it says this: "For all the people of Judah took joy in the priests and the Levites and their work." Now, speaking of, how can you joyfully come into the house of the Lord? How can you joyfully give? And how can you joyfully serve? And let me just tackle the very first thing, okay? How can you joyfully give to somebody else? If you are living paycheck to paycheck and somebody needs $300 for a new washing machine, and God has called you to step in and meet that need, right? And you're living paycheck to paycheck and barely pay your own bills, and now they have something that they need to do in their life, which is buy a new washing machine or whatever, and God's calling you to do it, and you don't have the money. Then if you do give that $300, it's going to be an expense of your own family, or an expense where you're not going to be joyful. You're going to be like, fine, take my money, But in the same way, if you have set aside, that's what Paul calls us to do in 1 Corinthians. If you set aside a little bit of money every single paycheck, or every month, or every quarter, however you want to do it, maybe you just set aside $20 here, or $50 there, or $100 there, and you set that aside specifically to meet the needs of others. And then when others arise that have need, you won't be pulling out of your paycheck to paycheck. You'll actually have a dedicated fund to pull from, and then you'll be able to say, hey, I have this money sitting around specifically for this, let me give it to you. And then it really will be a joyful way to give. So that's a way to give joyfully, and not out of, I really don't want to. Secondly, to our question, how do we serve joyfully? To answer that, I would say in our church, and this is kind of a rule that we have in our church, I try my best to stand by it, but only have 2.5 jobs. I only have 2.5 jobs, because it can be easy to get overloaded with church roles and church jobs. So if you want to serve joyfully, don't overload yourself and make it a burden. Oh, don't only, and it's just a rule, 2.5 jobs. Okay, so what does 2.5 jobs mean? That means that if I was a Sunday school teacher, that's 1 job. And if I sang in the choir, that's 2 jobs. And if I help with VBS, that's another half. Those would be your 2.5 jobs. If it's something that you have to do every week and it's an ongoing process, that's a full job. That's a full point. If it's something that you help out with once a year, for example, VBS, M4 camp, one-time events, going to chaperone on the youth, hosting a D-Now. Those are half jobs. So if it's a whole job, this is something you do every week, all the time. This is a continual thing, teaching Sunday school, etc., singing the choir. If it's something that it's just one time a year that you help out with, those are half jobs. And our goal for our church is only for you to have 2.5 jobs. So And that's the max, right? That's like the max that we try to allow you to have. And the reason is because we see burnout happen, not only in pastors, but also in church members. And we want to strive the best that we can for that not to happen. So, to anybody watching this who's like, well, I'm serving in this and this committee and this committee and this committee, I'm also doing these, and this things. Well, no wonder it's not a joy anymore to serve. Also, if you have your family life and your church life is pulling you away from your family life, it can not be a joy. So, to the final question, how do you make it a joy to come to church? How do you make that a joy? Number one thing, I think you should find the right church. The right church, you're going to be joyful when you walk in. It's going to be an amazing environment. You're going to have people who love you there. You're going to have your small group, your people who you relate to. Maybe the first couple of times you go, it may be a nervous thing, but eventually it's going to become this joyful thing that you go. So I think a big thing in that is just finding the right church. But two, it is getting around the right community that brings your family in. Because if your family is split and this family is going over here and that family, part of your family is going over here, and maybe we don't have a good youth program or we don't have a good children's program or we don't have that, so the family gets split, well, of course that brings a little bit of joy out because our whole family isn't coming together in the same house to worship God. And that's one of the things that I kind of don't like. And I hate to say the word don't like, but we have so many churches now. We have in a 25-mile block area, I think I counted, we have over 12 churches just in 25 miles. So when we say there's a church on every corner, there really is. So it makes it super easy for somebody in the family to go here, and somebody from the family to go here, and somebody from the family to go here. And it makes it a chaotic Sunday morning. It makes it a chaotic Wednesday night. And it really just kind of takes the joy out of having our whole family come to church somewhere. So my last bit of information is, hey, look, if you find a church that you like, let the whole family come together. So just to kind of recap, all right, how do we have joy in serving others? We don't overload ourselves. We don't, and that's not a bad thing. That's not to say that you can't do it or that you couldn't do it if you tried to. I'm sure you could have 4, 5, 6 jobs in the church, but we want to keep the joy in it. And so we're asking God, what are the 2.5 jobs that you're calling me to do? I want to give my best effort to those. How do we have joy in giving to others? Specifically, if we don't have a whole lot of money, we have that joy by setting a little bit back. And then lastly, how do we have joy when we come to church? Well, picking the right church is a huge thing. Do they have the things that I need? Is it is it a church that loves me? And is this a place that I can see myself staying for this foreseeable future? If the answer is yes to those things, absolutely. Let that be your church. And then bringing your family in and having a family style worship together, that's such a beautiful thing. And I think many parents and even kids and grandchildren and grandparents have so much joy seeing the whole family worship together. I know it's not always possible, and it's not always possible, but I do think it's the most beneficial thing. So those are a little bit of things that we see from only the 3 chapters that we read today. And once again, we are in the Ultra. This will be the last time you get to see me by myself. I'm so excited about tomorrow. And until then, you'll find out who our guest speaker is. Anyways, peace. Oh, get out of my seat! Literally, man. Hey, go! Oh, you got my seat. Okay, you can sit there.